Welcome back to Always Ageless, where we celebrate living life fully at every stage and every age. I'm your host, Valerie Van de Zilver, and today we're diving into a conversation that's as heartfelt as it is important. My guest today is a woman whose name is synonymous with compassion, care, and a deep-rooted passion for serving seniors. Sam, as we call her, Cradduck is the founder of the Living Room Senior Home Care, a company that's transforming the way we think about serving seniors and aging. But she doesn't stop there. Her platform, morethanheart.com, is dedicated to educating and empowering families navigating all of the challenges of senior care. Why do so many families hesitate to plan for aging? Well, that's a good question. And what's coming in the world of senior care? How did Sam's journey lead her to become such a powerful advocate and educator for aging loved ones? Well, we're about to find out. So grab a cup of tea, settle in, or turn your volume up if you're driving. Get ready for an inspiring, eye-opening conversation. Welcome, Sam, very much to Always Ageless. We're so glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Sam, take us back. What was the young Sam like? Did you always know you would end up serving seniors?
No, I had no idea this is where my path would lead. But I always grew up with a high regard, just a high, incredible respect for our aging population. And I grew up around some of the most wonderful older adults that anybody ever could. My grandmother was the salt of the earth. And so I knew that I had that respect and that love and that compassion. But no, I didn't see myself in this industry and doing this as a career path.
Well, what was the moment or the series of moments that led you to start the Living Room Senior Home Care?
So I found myself single late in life, after having had a family and raised 4 children.
Oh my.
And so I reinvented myself at that point. And so I initially thought that I was going to become a marriage family therapist. And
Oh,
if you've had a failed marriage, become a therapist, right? And in the course of studying for that, I called my advisor in college and I said, look, I need to do something other than psychology for a moment. And so she threw me in a gerontology class and I fell in love. I fell in love with the whole process of understanding more about the aging, understanding more about the physical issues, but the psychological, the social, the emotional, all of those issues. And I called her back up and I said, look, I want to change my majors out. I want to be a gerontologist. And so that started my journey forward. I knew I, at that point, wanted to just immerse myself in senior care. And at the end of that, 10 years ago, we started the Living Room Senior Care as a ground up. We're not a franchise. We're a ground up startup. And we wanted to reinvent the way I saw senior care being done and put people in front of dollar bills. And I didn't choose a franchise because I never wanted anyone to tell me that a person was less valuable than the bottom line. So in the course of that, I started doing a lot of teaching and a lot of training for my own caregivers and my own staff, and then the family members. Every time we would go in and we would take on a new client, I would spend hours educating them on what was going on with their loved ones or themselves. And it just evolved into this whole training program where we teach it from the perspective of the aging.
yeah. Well, you've certainly built an incredible following. And for those who are listening or watching, if you go to Sam's Facebook page, you'll see that on her post, she has like 30,000 views on each post that she has, some even more than that. So you've built an incredible following. Why do you think it is that people resonate so much with you?
I think people are hungry for this. I don't think we spend enough time. We absolutely never plan for aging. We plan for anti-aging. We plan for the fountain of youth. Everybody's afraid of what's going to follow this. So we don't talk enough about
No,
it,
we don't.
but we all recognize that it's happening either to us or our loved ones. And so I think the topics that I cover and just the reels that I put out there resonate with so many people. We have so many family members that are in the position of being caregivers, and more than heart, the whole name came from
Yeah.
you have the heart as a family member, you have the heart to do the care, but it takes more than that to provide dignity. And so we just don't take the time to understand from the other person's perspective often enough. And we need to spend time understanding it from our aging loved one's perspective. And
Yeah.
when we do, then we're better equipped and they're better able to accept what we're offering. And so I just think it's much needed.
Well, we've talked about that, and we certainly agree on that point. We know also you certainly can tell people over and over again that senior care is definitely not an easy industry. So what
Not
keeps you going on those really tough days?
um from a care side, honestly knowing that I'm making a difference, making a positive impact in the lives of the people that we get to serve and the people that I get to affect, whether I even get to meet them now or not. The literally the hundreds of thousands of comments that come through that thank you for giving me understanding of my mom. It changed our final days together, or my dad, and knowing that I got to make a difference, just a slight difference, even in a positive way. That honestly energizes me. It makes me want to do more. It makes me want to be there more and reach more people.
And you are, and you do that, I know. Well, what do you think the biggest misconceptions people have about seniors and their needs?
That that we age from infancy to middle age, and then when we reach our older adult years, we become infants again.
Oh,
And I hear that so frequently, and
yeah.
honestly, it angers me when people emphasize adults. Our aging loved ones, our seniors, our older adults are adults. 100% adults until their final breath, until their final sunset. And I think the misconception that we need to treat them like infants again removes all dignity and respect from that process. And so I will fight till the nth of me to change that misconception.
Amen. Amen. Absolutely. And I caught something that you said earlier about, we all want anti-aging products, right? And nobody wants, I don't know that I can say I've seen products that say how to age well, right? It's all
Right, right,
age at all. That's all it's
right.
supposed to do. So let's talk about your company. You named your company The Living Room. That's such an inviting name. What does that mean to you, and how did you choose it?
So that's an interesting question. So if you remember back in the day before funeral homes actually existed, we had in our homes what was called a parlor room.
We
And
did.
so families, when someone would pass away, the families would host the funeral in their own homes. And oftentimes a lot of your older homes, and I'm from back east, so a lot of your older homes have two front doors. And that was so people could enter in through one door, pay their respect to the loved one in the parlor room, and then exit from the other door. And so when funeral
Interesting.
homes actually came into play, these parlor rooms that were in these homes still existed, but what were their names going to be? What were we now going to name the old style parlor room when we no longer honored our dead there? And that's how actually the name the living room, many people don't know that. That's how the name the living room came to be. And so once they started honoring that, they started honoring the living. And so when I was naming the company, we oftentimes spend our time, even in a terminal diagnosis, focusing on the inevitable. The inevitable is that you're going to pass from this earth, you're going to die. But the reality is, you can still live every moment and every day until then. And so I want to focus on the living
Oh,
Inevitable is going to come. And so that's how we named the company. It was actually my youngest son and I who kind of conjured up the name, and he had a few options, and he chose this one, and it has been definitely unique to the industry.
absolutely. And what an interesting background, not only from the history itself, but to think about it as the living room.
Yes.
Fascinating. Great name and great choice. Tell us about the first senior you cared for, or someone who really made an impact on your heart.
Oh my goodness. So the first gentleman that our company signed on, um, he didn't have any family involved in his life.
Oh,
And so when I went in to sign him on, with eyes of glory that this was going to just, be an explosive moment in our business. And
and it probably was.
it took a moment, but it really was. So he had children, but he didn't have family involved, which we oftentimes see. And so our company got to become his family.
Oh,
And we did holidays with him. We cooked holiday meals and took them to him. He just was just the coolest guy with so much history. And I tell people all the time, our aging, our living history books. And all you have to do is take the time to sit and listen, and you're going to hear history in a way that no one else can ever explain it to you. You're going to hear it with the emotions. And so he had been there, done that. He was a serviceman, he was a veteran. And so he shared so many things and shared his life with us. And we were able to take care of him through his final sunset. And so that's exactly what I love doing, is being part of that with people.
and just imagine the impact you did have on his life and the opportunity he had to share all of his stories with you.
Yes.
Yeah, how nice of you to do that. What do you think is something that people don't realize about the emotional side of senior caregiving? And I think you've just shared some of it, but
So I think people view this as a job, and it's not, it's a calling. And so too many times I hear other agencies and other people that'll tell you that you're supposed to remove yourself emotionally. You can't be a caregiver and not be emotionally involved. You become a task doer at that moment. So if you're looking for task doers, then you look for people that are emotionally disconnected. But if you're looking for true caregivers, then you have to realize as family members that somebody that has a calling to this is going to become emotionally invested, and they're going to cry real tears when your loved one passes. They're going to feel real emotions when things change. And I think too frequently family members and even people in the field believe that we should remove ourselves emotionally, and you can't stay true to the calling if you're not emotionally invested.
very interesting. Interesting. And that's true. It's because really it's somewhat like being, a nurse or a doctor. I mean, you don't want to just be a statistic. You don't just want to be another patient. You don't want them to just walk in and out of your room
Right.
as though you were just another number. No one wants to feel that way. Well,
Right.
you've likely witnessed multiple times the difference that really good care can make. Do you have an
Absolutely.
example of a situation where maybe you stepped into a situation and you made a really big difference?
So when COVID happened, we all know the travesty of what went on, and it doesn't matter where you land in your belief system of what was going on, in our world. What matters is it affected real people and it affected real families. And so I was super fortunate. Our company serves in a very large senior community up here. And when I say up here, we're in the high desert of Southern California. So
Let's tell everybody where you are. Yeah.
yeah, so our company serves the high desert of Southern California. So we're fortunate enough we had partnered with an independent living community prior to COVID. And so we staffed that community 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we provided care to the residents that needed assistance. And so during the COVID outbreak, we all know the horrible stories of family members who were passing away in hospitals, and you couldn't go in and you couldn't be with them and you couldn't see them. And so the executive director at the time of the community and myself and an owner of a hospice agency that we worked very closely with all partnered together, and we took some vacant, they had like bungalows on the campus of this independent living, so just small apartments that are small homes. And so we took the vacant ones and we were allowing families to discharge their loved ones out and come under our care
Oh,
those final days so they could be with them and be present. And I don't think there'll ever be anything in my life or anything in my career that will ever compare to allowing the unity of those families during those final moments when no one else could see a way to get them back together. And so that partnership that we had and being able to do that, and my care team that jumped on board and said, absolutely, we're going to work with COVID patients and we're going to do everything we can to make their final days more comfortable, but then allowing the families to be part of that with them. That honestly, I don't think there'll ever be anything that'll compare to the impact that that was able to have.
it's that's very touching because I've heard the stories also of the
Right,
people whose their loved one has been inside a hospital room and they've stood at the window and could not touch or talk to or be there with their loved one. And if their loved one was on a higher floor, they couldn't even see them. And
right.
I can't even imagine the tragedy and the emotional impact on being held away from your loved one during that time.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's yeah, I can only you certainly that would have made a difference for people. Um and
And
but
we couldn't do it for everyone, but we were certainly able to do it for enough, and we made a huge impact on the ones that we were able to do that with.
so their families could literally stay there with them.
Yes, their families were able to be in the room. They took, because it was independent community, it was like bringing them home. And so we were able to bring the families and the loved ones together to hold hands, and
Oh,
we offered them, the PPE, the personal protective equipment, if they wanted and needed it. And we were able to allow them an opportunity to be together. And it was honestly miraculous for those families and those loved ones.
oh, I'm sure.
Yeah,
I'm sure. And so I just sit here and listen to this and wonder like why didn't everyone arrange for something like that?
right,
And if you
right.
just think of what a difference it would have made for so many people.
Because we spend too much time in the box and not thinking out of the box.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We know that, don't we?
Yeah,
We know that.
yeah.
And we get so engrossed in, well, those are the rules and we can't do it. And I think in all fairness, at that time, none of us really knew what was going on. Right.
Right, and we didn't know the rules. The rules had to be ever evolving because we didn't know what we were up against.
Right. Right.
And so it was risk that people chose to take in an effort to allow for that. And I had some amazing, amazing caregivers and team members that just jumped in and said, yes, this is the right thing to do, and we'll do it.
You must have. Well, let's go on. In addition to your home care company, you have morethanheart.com. What's
Yeah.
the mission behind that?
So the mission behind that is plain and simply to bring dignity and respect back to our aging years. To help family members understand what's going on with their loved ones and understand how to take care of them, because it becomes so frustrating to do something that you're not trained to do from just a skill standpoint. Doing a bed change, doing incontinent care, taking care of your loved one. How do you get them to take a shower?
Yeah.
Just something as simple as that. And understanding, why can a professional do it, but I can't do it? And then understanding the relationships that are involved in these care scenarios and the impact that they're going to have. And so I bring More Than Heart because you have that heart, but you need more than that. You need the understanding, you need to understand the skills, and then you can bring dignity and respect back into those aging years. And for our aging folks, you know, every stage of our life is new for us. You know, when we became parents, it was new. When we became middle age, it was new. When we became empty nesters, it was new. Well, being older is new. And so learning that it does come with some limitations, but limitations don't have to take the life away. And helping our aging population understand just what's going on. Why do I wear glasses now when I never did? Why do I not hear a female's voice as well as I hear a male's voice? There are inherent changes that happen in our bodies. And so understanding why this is happening and not feeling isolated and alone is the biggest thing we can do for our community.
We know that you love teaching and educating.
I do.
Your passion for teaching and educating about seniors is clear in so many ways. What's the most important lesson you'd like to pass on?
The most important lesson is adults can make bad decisions. Adults are allowed to make adult decisions. And as as a loved one grew up, your parent, who you're now thinking you're taking care of, watched as you made some really foolish moves in your life, be it in relationships, be it in finances, be it in professionalism, whatever. We as parents watch our children make foolish decisions and we allow it to happen because they're adults. As you become that now adult child who's caring for your aged loved one, don't take their adultism away. Don't take away their right to make decisions, even if those decisions aren't the healthiest. And I see it so often where family members are like, oh, they can't eat that. They can't have that. They can't have their coffee because the doctor said that they have high blood pressure. They're 95 years old. They've been having coffee for the last 80 years.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Don't take it away today. And I think if we could get families to understand that we're not humans, humans pass. That's part of humanity. Death is part of humanity. And accepting that that's going to happen and not trying to preserve us, and allowing us to die under our own terms with our own bad choices. I think that would be the greatest thing I could ever get across. And accepting that it's okay for people to make bad choices.
That I think is really powerful, because as a senior caregiver myself, albeit not my full-time job, but nevertheless it is. I have an aging mom, very aging mom.
Yes.
And yeah, we think that they need us to make their decisions for them. And because we also are probably a parent to younger children, we've been able to tell them what to do. We think that, yeah, it's interesting that you would say that now we think that our parents aren't able to make their own decisions. And in
Right.
some cases, they do need our guidance and they do
In
need,
some cases they do, yes.
but yeah, you're right. We probably did some really dumb things when we were growing up and they should be allowed to do a few too. That's pretty strong perspective. Absolutely. Well, if you could, Sam, create the perfect senior care model, tell us something revolutionary. What would that look like?
Oh my. So I have a dream.
Oh, tell us.
I do. I feel like Martin Luther King moment here. I have a dream. And my dream is a senior community that's not focusing on all of the bad things, but definitely focusing on living each and every day. A community that's designed that has its own shopping, its own stores. Allow our seniors to go to the stores, allow them to go shopping, allow them to do things inside their community and be part of a community that doesn't focus on the negatives, that focuses on continuing to live every day out. I think we have the technology now to allow that. We definitely have the abilities. We're supposed to be this greatest nation, yet we are far behind some of the advancements that we see in other countries and cultures where it comes to our aging loved ones. Unfortunately, because we've oftentimes put our aging loved ones on a shelf. And we've seen them to be more of a burden than an asset. We've seen them to be, because they move slower, they process slower, they think slower. We stop seeing the value because we're instant gratification. And I want to see us bring a community together that can see the value, but then do intergenerational activities in those communities so that our younger children that are no longer exposed to our aging population have that exposure from a young age. We live too far away from our oftentimes our loved ones. And so oftentimes our grandchildren aren't in our lives every day like we used to be. So we've lost some of that intergenerational connection and respect.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. So what would how would you create this? I mean, what would it physically look like? Would it be something you would do in the homes of these families? Would it be more like a community where they would go and the younger people would be involved? Because if you think about senior communities, assisted living and so forth, they have activities, right? They take them on field trips and they watch movies and all those things. So what would you do that would be different than that?
I do see it to be more of a community, not just a private in-home. I do see it to be more of a community type. I hate the word facility.
We hate it too, but
But for people to understand, sometimes we use terms that we don't like. So I do see that, but I think where mine is different is in appearance and in process as well. So in the appearance, when you walk into any senior community, it looks like it's a quote facility or a community. It doesn't look like it's a neighborhood. It doesn't look like it's a community. It looks like it's hallways with doors and numbers and the
as it is.
same carpet, and it's inside of a building. But what if we design something like a Vegas hotel, like New York, New York, where you have Central Park and you have the open sky and you have apartments that have their own front porches and their own swings. And yes, they're part of a big building, but it's a community that looks like a neighborhood,
Uh-huh.
that has streets, that has open dining around the clock. So you don't have to eat at 8:30 in the morning and have your coffee then. You've earned the right to sleep till 11 if you want and have
Yeah.
your coffee then. If you want ice cream at 2 a.m., it's available to you. A town inside of, um, where you have a community and you do school programs and you do intergenerational activities, but you do it on a scale where it's in your town. It's not a building.
And you and I have talked about the blue zones, right?
Yes,
Where there are towns around the world actually that are geared towards seniors, not exactly like this because they're not care communities, so to speak, but how they've completely changed their layout, their landscaping, their way of living, their opportunities for people to live in these blue zones so
yes,
that they can function differently.
yes, yes. We need to honor our aging. We need to. We're all aging, and that's the problem. We fail to see that every single one of us, you can have a prejudice against other races and other cultures and other religions and everything, and you may never be that. But when you have a prejudice against aging, you have a prejudice against your future self.
You do. Yep,
And
absolutely.
and we have to erase that.
So I'm in a community where we talk about advocacy and we go to politicians and community leaders and ask them to do things for the seniors in the community. Well, we really don't do that. We build parks or whatever. But then we look at those community leaders and say, that's you. Look at yourself. Okay.
Right.
You are in your 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. You're making decisions that you should make more decisions favoring the older population, and you don't. And I think that, again, we've talked about this, people don't realize that pretty soon our generation is going to be, there's going to be more of us and fewer people under 18. And so we
Yes.
really should be doing more for us. So let's go to this. We talked about also the senior tsunami or the silver tsunami, whatever you call it, and the growing senior population. So what do you see happening in the next 10 to 20 years? And maybe that's too far out. What do you see happening in the next 5 years?
Unfortunately, and I say this all the time, we knew this was going to happen. We
Yeah,
knew the boomers were born. There's no secret that the boomers exist.
yeah,
And yet we never prepared for what was going to happen when the boomers were of age, when they were an aged population. This silver tsunami that's happening now, it's not a shock. Yet we didn't prepare our medical field. We have less than 2% of all medical personnel trained, from the highest level physician to the lowest level intake coordinator in a hospital, that understands anything about gerontology and aging. Less than 2%. So we haven't even prepared. We have a medical field that's about curing things and fixing things, and not about allowing natural progression of age to just happen. And so we're always trying to throw a pill to fix it. You can't fix years. You
no,
can't fix it.
no.
And so what do I see? Unfortunately, unless we put the brakes on the way we've always done things, and we start looking at a new way to invent this and a new way to manage senior care, we're going to have a lot of aging folks that can't afford care, a lot of family members that aren't performing care. We're going to have an unfortunate event that's going to happen that goes back to the 20s and 30s, when, do you remember the poorhouses
Yeah.
and reading about the poorhouses, where they actually had to take in our aging? And that's how Social Security started, was because somebody had enough compassion to say, hey, we don't want our seniors dying in what we call the poorhouse.
Mhm.
But we're back there again, only we're back there again with a different culture. And this culture doesn't have the same level of compassion that we had in the 20s and 30s.
Well,
So
yeah.
honestly, I see us derailing. I see a train wreck if we don't change the way that we view things, from just the staffing ratio numbers that are required in our skilled nursing facilities and in our assisted livings. Our staffing ratios are so low that we're not giving proper care.
So where would you, if you could be an advocate as you are, if you are an advocate and you really wanted to make a big change, where would you start?
I've started by sharing my voice, and where I would love to land, honestly, I would love someday to stand in front of somebody that has decision-making power, in front of Congress, and plead the case for our aging population, to say they deserve better. They deserve more than we're giving them. And when you set these staffing ratio numbers at this few, and then our corporations put their administrators and people that never touch the floor. We'll say, okay, well, we have administrators and managers that are trained to do the care, even though they're never doing it, and we add them to the ratios. Then we're asking our care staff to be miracle workers, and they're not. They're human beings. And so they're burned out. They can't do the job correctly. Family members are upset. Seniors aren't getting the proper care. And I think we need to let people that that make the decisions that see the impact that those decisions are making. We need them to see bed sores. We need them to see improper care. We need them to see neglect. Neglecting care is huge, and it's not because the people that are doing the jobs don't care. It's because they don't always have the right tools to do the job effectively.
So then along with that line, Sam, what role does community and connection play in senior care now versus in the past?
So I think community and connection should always have played a big role, and it played a bigger role in the past where we were freer in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s to take care of our loved ones. Oftentimes your seniors moved, your aging loved ones moved into your family home.
Right.
We didn't have the dual working families. We didn't have the expenses and all of the things that have gone on. So now that we have dual working families, we have travel, so we now live further away from our loved ones than we used to. I've shared with you, I was 2,500 miles away from my mom, as she was aging and passing. So we now have more distance between our relations where, back in the old days, our loved ones came to live with us and we took care of them and we honored them and we respected them in our homes. And the family unit took on the role of being the care provider. And when that stopped happening, then assisted livings happened. And the assisted living model, as it was first made, was amazing. It was an amazing model for care. But like many things, greed took over, business took over, and we realized that we could make a money mill out
Yeah,
of our aging population. And
absolutely.
how do you make more money? You staff less, you charge more. And at the end of the day, we're not honoring the people that we're there to honor. We need to take the profitability out of the equation and put the care back in.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But I hear some people say that that staffing is a problem because there aren't enough. There aren't enough caretakers. There aren't enough people that are either willing to do that or are at the right level or educated or whatever. So how do you do that? How do you do that in your business, Sam? How do you
It,
find people, especially in the location where you are, where you're a small community, you don't have a huge abundance of people?
so it is true. It is true. There is a caregiver shortage. And part of the reason why there's a caregiver shortage is it's a low paying job. It doesn't provide well. But we have to think about, okay, if I'm paying this much, then how much do I have to charge by the time I pay all of the things that go along with doing business? And so then this number becomes unattainable for our seniors to pay.
Yep. Yeah.
And
So
and that's where care has gone. Prior to 2016 in the state of California, caregiving wasn't regulated. And so there was no regulations that said you had to pay minimum wage. There was no licensing, there was no backgrounds, there was no, and while it had its model and it worked, I understand the need for the protective side of the regulations to make sure that we don't have criminals and abusive people out doing the care. But when we put it under full regulations and we said, okay, now we're going to make this just like any other job, and it has to pay X number of dollars and overtimes and all of those things and all of the licensing and the bondings and all of those things, then we raise the price of senior care so high. To keep the price of senior care somewhat affordable, the pay is low and the expectations are super high. So what we have isn't enough people. I don't think we have a shortage of people that care. I don't think we have a shortage of people that could and would do the jobs. We have too high a level of burnout.
no.
We have too high a level of people that feel like the corporations and the people that are in charge don't care enough about them. And so they don't go into the field. And we as the owners, we as the people that are doing these jobs, that are employing these caregivers, We have to realize you can't run a business that says it cares for people if you don't care for the very people that work with you.
Yeah.
And you have to put your job as the owner, as the manager, as the administrator, as the facilitator, has to be taking care of your staff. And you can't take care of your staff if all you're doing is expecting more and more and more and more and giving them less and less and less. And so when we fix that mindset, then we can start seeing a change in the number of people that'll go into this field that are qualified.
And certainly, as with any company, I know that I tour a lot of assisted living communities, and I'll ask them, what sets you aside? And one of them will say, well, this company, we have a very high standard of care. We have high expectations of our staff and our team and our people. And so that's from the top down. And certainly, if they don't, then that's going to reflect in their care.
Sure.
But this is definitely, definitely profits are important, but it always seems to me, and I'm sure to you too, that if you're doing a good job and you're doing a good job for your seniors, then the profits are going to be there.
That's right.
And
That's
I
right.
realize they have to make a living too, and they have to support their facilities, right?
Sure.
Their physical facilities and their staff and their cooking and their electricity and certainly insurance and all those things. But it can all be done still. It depends on your culture.
Yeah, the cost of doing business has changed so much. And I started out as a private caregiver, somebody that was paid privately to care. I never worked for an agency in my life until I started one.
Is that
And
right?
so yeah, so as a private caregiver, I used to think that agencies overcharge just for greed. And I now know as an agency owner, it's not just greed that drives the price up. It is the cost of doing business. And that's where government officials need to come in. So if I'm having to add $10 an hour on just to cover my insurance and licensing and taxes and training taxes and unemployments and all of those things, tag that on to the price I pay the caregiver, and that's still not any profitability or keeping the doors open or the office open. We have to shrink that $10 an hour mark. That's where the legislation and where the change needs to come in, is shrinking down the cost of doing the business for the aging population. Whether that comes with subsidies, whether that comes with just some cost controls, and I don't know, but something has to happen because you can't run a non-profitable company and stay in business. Doesn't matter what your heart is. You're going to go out of business.
No, and likewise, families can't afford health care when their Social Security barely covers the cost of their own living. And families will save money. Maybe they even have no house payment at all. I have a friend sold his house he owned free and clear, but it wasn't in California. It was in the Midwest where the price of housing was much less. He's my age and he's going to be okay as long as he only lives 2 years. After that, he has absolutely no money. And
Yes.
so it all, it's, as you said, it's all going to just come crumbling down. You can't blame people for not saving enough because most people didn't know they were going to live this long. I had no idea my mom would be 105.
Which is amazing.
It's
Yeah,
just pretty amazing, but she's not the only, and I hear stories every day now of people are 100 or 101, and that's going to increase.
right.
Going to increase.
So,
We're going to live longer. I hope we do. So
yeah, think
certainly,
about the fact that your mom has lived almost double what retirement age was when she could retire.
oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
that's insane to think. And who could save for that? We couldn't save for the expectation of the longevity, but we certainly have to do our due diligence. And we as human beings are called to take care of one another. And we have to do better in doing so. And how do we do that? We have to bring an understanding. We have to get out of the box. We have to start thinking out of the box. How do we make it more affordable for this person?
Well, we also have talked about planning.
Yes.
And so many families don't have the talk about
Oh,
with their aging parents or their aging relatives or themselves until there's a crisis.
That's
And
right.
rather than making information-based decisions, they make crisis-based decisions. So what are the consequences? And we know this, but just tell us, of waiting too long.
So when you wait too long to have the talk, you're up against the wall. You're literally, you have your loved one's passing and you don't even have the power of attorney in place. You don't have a will, you don't have an executor. Banking accounts get frozen, assets get frozen, then you're in probate court. You're waiting until there's a crisis moment and the paramedics are standing there and you know that your loved one doesn't want to be resuscitated, but nobody ever did paperwork. And that paramedic is bound by the duty of their calling to resuscitate your loved one and bring them back to a quality of life that was already impaired and that they didn't want to have. And because we never want to think about the inevitable, we don't plan for our own futures. Every person over the age of 18 needs to have their planning and their paperwork done, and they need to be ready for what could happen. Who's going to raise your kids if you're catastrophically something happens? Who's going to take care of them? Who's going to take care of your business? Who's going to take care of your parents? All of those things are important, but then as you age, it's like, you know it's going to happen, and yet you're still less than 60% of our population is prepared for their own passing and for their own health decline from a legal standpoint, from a paperwork standpoint. And so all of a sudden now you've got families that are arguing and fighting over things that they shouldn't have to even be worried about. You've got, you're in the hospital and your loved ones are trying to keep everything in motion, everything going, but they don't know, and the homeowner's insurance get canceled because you never told them how to pay the bill.
Yep. What do you think? And we're kind of getting down to the end of our program, which is really sad because I'm going to have you back again. But what do you think people's biggest fears are? They know it's going to happen. Why do you think they have so much fear and guilt to have these conversations?
Death is final. Death is
It is.
hard. Death is final, and death involves grief. And I said it in a support group I was with this week. Grief is just love. You can't have one without the other. And so recognize, if you love that person enough that you're going to grieve them when they're gone, love them enough to prepare for that moment for yourself and for them. You know, this is hard. Nobody wants that final moment of not having their loved one around.
No,
None of us
no,
do.
none of us do.
And so if we don't talk about it, if we don't think about it, then somehow or another we believe we're going to be able to stave it off. We're going to
Yeah.
be able to save ourselves from it. That's not the truth. It's not going to happen that way. Death is going to come whether we're prepared or not. But it's going to come with a whole lot more understanding and peace and honestly just ability to manage to get through it if we prepare for it early on.
So what's next for you? And if you, two questions, what's next for you? What are your big dreams on the horizon? We've talked about a couple of those. And fast forward in your career, what do you hope people say about the impact that you've made?
So what's next for me is I want nothing more than to continue doing exactly what I've been doing, and that is reaching family members and aging folks and loved ones and helping them understand this entire process in a way that maybe they've never thought about or viewed it. And so I would love to get, honestly, I'd love to get on the big stage. I'd love to be on TED Talk or in front of people and make a difference on a much, much bigger stage. What do I hope people say about me? Honestly, if one person can say I made a difference, if one person can say that just by being exposed to my teaching and my training or me as a person, it made a positive impact on their life and changed the way they viewed either themselves or their own loved ones, then I've done my job.
And probably you already have. I'm sure you already have. Sam, you tell me stories of people that you go to different places throughout the country in your travels, and someone come tell us one of those stories.
So just just recently I was in Kentucky. My two older daughters, my two daughters, and their families live in northern Kentucky where we were from. And so I went back and I was with family and I was in the Costco and I'm talking to my sister-in-law. We're walking through Costco and this lady stopped and she said, "I recognize your voice."
Really?
And she just heard me talking to my sister-in-law. She heard my voice and she said, "Oh my gosh, you're Sam." And I
Oh,
said, "Hi." And she said, "You have made such a difference in my mom and I. I lost my mom just a month ago.
oh,
Would have meant right before Christmas, actually." And she said, "Just listening to your training made such a difference for me and her. And I so appreciate you." And honest to goodness, it happens and it is amazing. I didn't expect to be a quote unquote influencer with, millions and millions of views. I've got like 34 million views across the platforms. It's insane to think about. But for me, it's just a stepping stone to a bigger platform because if that many people on social media want to hear me, then there's that many people in this world that need to hear it. And so I'm honestly ready to go. I just am waiting for, the next step up, and I'm going to keep doing this.
and you have made such a huge difference. For our viewers and listeners who haven't followed her, definitely follow her Facebook page, which is The Living Room, correct?
Yes, yes,
She's amazing. Her followers, you have something like hundreds of thousands of followers,
yes.
and her views are incredible. And what that says is not so much, you may say, oh, that's just social media, and that may be, but what that really means is that here is a lady who has made a huge difference in the lives of so many people. Unfortunately, we do have to end our show, but we're going to have Sam back. So be sure and send us your questions. We do respond to everybody. And we've had an incredible conversation today with you, Sam. It's
Thank
the
you.
one thing if there's one thing we can all take away, it's that aging isn't something to fear, but something we should prepare for with intention, dignity, and definitely more than heart. So whether you are an aging adult, whether you're caring for aging parents, thinking about your own future, or you just want to understand this journey better, now is definitely the time to start. Sam, thank you for sharing your wisdom, your passion, and most of all, your heart with us today. I met Sam just a few weeks ago, and I immediately knew that she's someone that our audience, our viewers and listeners would want to hear from. And if you want to learn more, be sure to visit morethanheart.com or on Facebook, The Living Room Senior Home Care, because aging starts with knowledge and the right support. Until next Monday at 3 o'clock or the next time we see you, remember that age is just a number, but living fully is a choice. So stay curious, stay bold, and as always stay ageless.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.